Welcome, everyone, to another eerie night with Spectral Tales. Tonight, we have a spine-chilling tale to share, one that takes us deep into the heart of an abandoned house. Are you ready to face the darkness and uncover the secrets it hides? Prepare yourself for the unknown, because once you enter, there's no turning back. It was a cold, moonless night when Clara stood before the abandoned house. The old mansion had been vacant for as long as anyone could remember. Its windows were boarded up, the wood warped and splintered, and the once grand front door hung crookedly on rusted hinges. It was cursed, they said. Those who had entered never returned. But Clara wasn't like the others. She wasn't afraid. Her curiosity had always been stronger than her fear. Armed only with a flashlight and her own skepticism, she stepped forward, pushing the door open with a soft groan, and entered the house. The inside was even darker than she had imagined. The air was thick with dust, and the smell of mildew and decay filled her nostrils. Her flashlight flickered in the dim light, casting long, trembling shadows across the walls. As she moved deeper into the house, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't alone. Suddenly, Clara stopped. There, in the distance, she saw something, a faint glow, coming from what appeared to be a doorway at the far end of the hallway. She wasn't sure if it was her imagination or the flickering beam of her flashlight playing tricks on her, but it seemed as though the light was beckoning her, drawing her in. She took a step toward the door, and then another. With each step, the air grew colder, and the darkness seemed to grow deeper. Clara felt a cold shiver run down her spine. Something was wrong, but she couldn't turn back now. She had to know what was behind that door. Clara's heart pounded in her chest as she stepped cautiously toward the faint glow at the end of the hallway. She could feel the house around her, as if it were watching her, listening to her every movement. At the end of the hallway, she found a large wooden door. Its surface was cracked, the once beautiful carvings now faded with time. Strange symbols were etched into the wood, symbols she didn't recognize, yet something about them seemed familiar. With a deep breath, she twisted the knob, and the door creaked open slowly. She stepped inside. The room was dim, with shadows creeping along the walls. The floor was littered with broken glass and debris, as though the room had been abandoned for years. It felt as though the room was alive, feeding on her fear, drawing her deeper. The shadows in the corners stretched unnaturally, like they were reaching out toward her. A sudden noise made her freeze, a low, rumbling sound that seemed to come from the very walls themselves. Clara turned quickly, her heart racing, but when she looked back, the door she had entered through was gone. In its place was a solid, impenetrable wall. Her pulse surged in her chest as panic began to set in. She searched frantically for another way out, but there was none. The room, the walls, the house, it had swallowed her whole. In the distance, a faint sound echoed footsteps, slow and deliberate, though Clara couldn't see anyone. Clara's breath was ragged, her chest tightening with every shallow gasp. The cold was unbearable, like ice creeping beneath her skin. The footsteps that had echoed through the room grew louder, but still, Clara saw no one. Her heart pounded in her chest as she turned in every direction, searching for the source. The shadows were stretching, not just across the floor, but up the walls, reaching toward her as though they wanted to pull her into the dark. Suddenly, the beam from her flashlight caught something in the far corner of the room, almost hidden in the darkness. A silhouette, too still, too human, but just out of reach of the light's glow. Clara froze, her heart skipping a beat. Her hand shook, but she fought to keep the light steady. The figure didn't move. It was as if it was watching her, waiting. Her breath caught in her throat. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but her feet wouldn't move. She was rooted to the spot, as if the very air was holding her in place. She wanted to look away, to escape, but her body refused to obey. She was trapped, not just by the room, but by the oppressive weight of the presence that was closing in on her. Clara screamed, dropping the flashlight as the room exploded into complete darkness. Her fingers finding the flashlight once again. She shakily flicked it on, casting a weak beam of light across the room, but the room was no longer the same. The walls had disappeared. The floor was gone. There was nothing but an endless, black void surrounding her. Her breathing was shallow, ragged, as she tried to steady herself. The shadows around her seemed to shift, twisting and writhing as if they had a life of their own. And she realized that the hallway wasn't just a place. It was a trap, an endless cycle she couldn't escape. She knew she couldn't stay, but the fear, the overwhelming, suffocating fear, kept her frozen in place. As the darkness closed in around her once more, she heard it, the faint sound of footsteps, dragging slowly, deliberately toward her. They were too close. Too real. She turned, her eyes searching desperately for an escape, but the shadows were everywhere now. There was no way out. The footsteps grew louder, closer, until Clara couldn't tell if they were behind her or if they were coming from within her own mind. The air grew colder, and the darkness swallowed everything. And then, as the footsteps reached their peak, a cold, claw-like hand gripped her shoulder, pulling her back into the void. Clara's scream was drowned by the silence, and she knows there's no turning back. The thing that's been watching her is closer than ever, its presence, a chilling reminder that some nightmares never end. If you're still with us after that terrifying tale, make sure to hit the like button to show your support. Subscribe for more horror stories that will keep you up at night, and leave a comment telling us, what do you think is lurking in the darkness? Do you think Claire will ever escape, or is she doomed to haunt these halls forever? Stay tuned for more spine-chilling stories, if you dare.